Turks, JQ Granick is playing with you guys. Okay.
Welcome.
Apparently that's what happened. All right, so as always, you know the deal. You know the deal. You don't have to tell me. I don't have to tell you. You don't have to tell me. We got bad news. We got good news. We got Republicans acting poorly. We got Democrats acting poorly. And who's the cop on the beat to make it all stop? We are, okay?
Are we?
Well, I don't know that we're gonna make it stop. We're at least gonna tell you about it. And then in the long run, try to make it stop. All right, having said that, news.
The news is Anna's got to fix her hair. That's what the news is.
Okay.
We're gonna do it live, and then we're gonna talk about teachers.
Yeah, and then disaster. Yes.
All right. So, a new poll indicates that the majority of Americans are actually in favor of arming teachers as a way to mitigate the slaughter of children on campuses across the country. Now, this was a survey that was done by, I believe it was, yes, Economist and YouGov. And here's what they found. Among all respondents, 51% say they either strongly favor at 31% or favor somewhat at 20%, while just 37% say they oppose somewhat or oppose strongly, giving school teachers and school administrators the option of being armed at school. So, easy way to understand this, a slim majority, 51% of Americans agree that it might make sense to arm teachers. The same teachers who, by the way, have been defamed as groomers by the right wing, who have been completely tortured with all sorts of nonsense because they wanted to go back to school in a safe way during the pandemic. The teachers who are underpaid, undervalued, now are expected to protect your children with a gun in case a mass shooter enters the classroom. Now, understand what they're asking teachers to do. They're asking teachers to shoot and kill someone who poses a threat to their students. And for a lot of Americans, that might sound like it's all hunky-dory, it's totally fine, everyone thinks they're Rambo. But killing someone, shooting someone, is a pretty traumatic thing to go through. And we're asking our underpaid, undervalued teachers to do just that. And when you break it down by political identity, unsurprisingly, 73% of Republicans are in favor of arming teachers. 54% of independents are in favor of arming teachers. And for Democrats, the number is much lower at 31%.
Okay, so look, this is disastrous news on a couple fronts, but I think the most important part of the story is why we're getting these numbers. So I'll get to that in a second. But first, let me just deliver on what I think Democrats should be doing as I'm going to explain in the next part of this.
Which will fall on deaf ears.
Okay, so number one, apparently I have to explain why this is a terrible idea. Okay, most of the shooters are either current or former students. So one of the first things that you have to teach the teachers is which of your students should you shoot? Now, remember, you have to get training, although now Ohio, they passed a law where it's unclear they have to have any training at all. Where are you gonna put the gun? How are you gonna get the gun when you think a student is creating a potential shooting scenario? But are you sure? How sure are you that the student is dangerous? How sure do you have to be before you shoot and kill your own student? So this is already insanity. Second of all, we're really gonna ask our teachers. Now, I need you to be an expert in chemistry. And remember, you're gonna have to know the whole periodic elements and plus how to murder people that come in or kill people that come into your school, because we live in an insane country where we think this is normal. No other country thinks this. I'm gonna reiterate that 1,000 times throughout the shows so that you get it, because mainstream media doesn't do it. No other country does this. We here in America have lost our goddamn minds. And I'll tell you why in a second.
Can I just jump in real quick before, don't lose that thought. Also, let's not forget, when police respond to the mass shooter and they enter a classroom and see one person, a former student with a gun, and then they see the educator with a gun, are they definitely gonna know who the bad guy is? Yeah. Right, because the teacher is also risking his or her life in having that gun in his or her hands as authorities respond to the mass shooting. So that's also a huge risk that we're asking teachers to take on if this is what we're gonna do in lieu of common sense gun regulations, which honestly, in a country that endlessly disappoints me, is likely gonna happen.
So we asked Marines to do hundreds of hours of training, by the way, every year in guns and weapons safety. But teachers were gonna say, maybe 24 hours in Ohio, maybe none in training. And off you go. And by the way, I hope your aim is good, because you could also shoot and kill other innocent students. And I hope that you're a responsible person that locks away the gun at the right place and doesn't leave it out, because otherwise you're gonna make it easier for the school shooters. They can just pick up the teacher's gun and start killing everybody in the class the minute they're angry. Okay, now, 95% of teachers are opposed to this, but it doesn't matter. 95% of politicians who take money, or 100% of politicians who take money from the gun lobby, don't give a damn what teachers want or what's gonna keep your kids safe. They think, where's the money, Lebowski? Okay, and finally, let me ask you this thought before we get to the why this is happening. So we're gonna arm teachers because of school shootings. Well, we just had a shooting at a hospital in Tulsa yesterday, 5 dead. Should we arm the doctors too?
Arm everybody, because that's the solution, right? According to the gun lobby, which of course is working on behalf of gun manufacturers, the solution to gun violence is more guns, because more guns, of course, translates to more profits for the gun manufacturers, of course. More death for us, more fear for us, but hey, more fear is a good thing, Cenk. More fear is a good thing. That means more gun sales. You guys see how this works? Literally. You see how it's not about actually saving lives, how this is about exploiting one tragedy after another to sell more guns. That's what this is about. It's not about a common sense solution to stop the carnage. It's not about that.
Yeah, and so there's an estimate that if you have to arm every teacher in America, it'll get gun manufacturers an extra $3.5 billion at least. Okay, that is a lot of reasons for them to push their bitches, the Republican politicians, into pushing this agenda so they can make money and share small proceeds with people like Ted Cruz and pat him on his head.
Good boy, Ted Cruz.
And that Ted Cruz will do whatever they want, and the Republicans will push this out. By the way, then if you arm the doctors, that's another $3.5 billion. The nurses, another $3.5 billion. All go into the pockets of gun manufacturers because we live under corporate rule. Which finally gets me to why in the world does a majority of Americans agree with this? Because Republicans repeat it endlessly. I've now seen it dozens of times on television. The Republican comes and says, "I've got to arm the teachers. We've got to arm the teachers. Teachers need to show. They all need to be Rambo." And the Democrats say what?
Nothing.
Nothing. So all that, unless you watch TYT or another progressive show, all that you heard as an American is arming teachers is an awesome idea and almost the only idea. And Democrats never countered it, never said any of the points that we just made. Okay, I challenge you, find a single Democrat saying, hey, why aren't we arming doctors then if there's mass shootings at hospitals? You won't find it because they're losers and they don't understand that the words are supposed to come out of your mouth. You are supposed to make a counterpoint to the Republicans. But instead they're like, Chris Murphy, the legendary big gun control advocate, he owns the issue in the Senate for the Democrats. You know what he did yesterday? He begged Republicans to join him in a bill. Oh, did you beg hard enough, Chris? Is that what you do? You want me to call you Senator Murphy? Why? What have you ever gotten done? Nothing, zero. On your signature issue, zero, other than begging Republicans. That's why the majority of the country is like, I don't know, I guess it's the only idea. I guess let's arm the teachers.
It is a complete and utter disaster. And I do want to give you a few more details about what Cenk keeps alluding to in his argument regarding what Ohio is currently doing. Because as I mentioned earlier, this is likely to happen because we don't have listen, the Democratic Party is what the Republican Party was during the Bush years at this point. And the Republican Party is the extreme right, okay? Made up of all sorts of right-wing gang members, right-wing militias, right-wing extremists. It is insane how little representation normal people in this country have. With that said though, here's what's happening, just to give you an example of the extremism. Here's what's happening in Ohio. Let's go to graphic 6. Republican state lawmakers have sent a bill to Ohio Governor Mike DeWine that empowers local boards of education to allow teachers to carry a gun in the classroom. Under current law, A teacher would need consent of a board plus more than 700 hours of training to bear arms in schools. So at least the current law indicates that there are certain standards that an educator would need to meet before bringing a gun, a lethal weapon, into a classroom. But here's what the new legislation does. Under House Bill 99, that teacher would need consent of the board and to meet certain training requirements, which are capped by the state at 24 hours unless the local board demands more. The legislation doesn't clearly even establish any minimum number of training hours, and ample dispute and confusion exists as to what minimum standards the bill calls for. By the way, as I mentioned, the bill has already made its way to the state governor because it passed in the state Senate as well. So Ohio is just one state, but I guarantee you the domino effect will happen. Other red states will do the same thing. Then we'll hear about the disastrous, tragic stories of how more innocent people died as a result of the teacher having a firearm in his or her classroom. I guarantee it, I promise you. But that is exactly how this was supposed to play out. I need you guys to be, look, we have a smart audience, so most of you know this already, but you gotta read in between the lines. Oftentimes, when politicians tell you they're doing something for whatever reason, it's really not due to that reason. Look into who the policy actually benefits financially, and it's always some corporate person breathing down our necks and forcing us to follow through with policy that actually causes more harm than good.
Yeah, last thoughts here, just to buttress what Anna's saying. It's just corporate rule, guys. So anything that maximizes profit for a corporation is going to pass. Anything that challenges the profit of a corporation will never, ever, ever pass because bribery is legal in America. Mainstream media are all liars. They never talk about the bribery. That's why it happens. Everything else is squirrels. Arming the teachers is also squirrels. It's dangerous squirrels because it'll lead to more deaths. But anything that isn't gun control is squirrels. And finally, by the way, when the teachers start making mistakes and the kids grab their guns and what Anna said turns out to be true, you know what they're gonna propose next? Well, why don't we just arm the students?
Delicious profits for those gun manufacturers.
Oh, they're gonna love the 7-year-olds with Uzis. They're gonna love it. And yes, Republican politicians will say it with a straight face because they're paid to. And Democrats will surrender because they're paid to.
All right, well, let's get to our next story.
Just keep it flying.
Keep it flying? And why do you want to keep it flying?
Why would anybody want to erase our heritage?
Well, some people would say that flag symbolizes racism, it symbolizes slavery.
Yeah, but maybe he really, really likes slavery.
And they might have some valid points there.
That's their opinion, they're welcome to their opinion if they want it.
Are you pro-slavery or against slavery?
I have no comment, but thank you for the interview.
I'll give you one more chance. Pro or anti-slavery?
No comment.
I'll give you one more opportunity to say if you're pro or anti-slavery.
No comment.
All right, well, there you have it. No comment on the if you're in favor of slavery or not.
That was Jason Selvig from the Good Liars at the NRA conference where he gave an obvious racist, literally multiple opportunities to say that he's against slavery, but he just couldn't get himself to do it. Because guess what? There are people in this country who thought slavery was great, would love slavery to still exist. And that was at the NRA conference, which actually makes a lot of sense. And I'll get to the details of why I think that in just a moment. But Cenk, I mean, some people might watch that video and find it shocking. I watch that video and I think it's just another day in America.
Yeah, I hear you. So, people who wear the Confederate flag or flag are all saying, heritage. What part of the heritage? See, that guy just made it clear. At least he's honest. He's like, yeah, the slavery part of the heritage. That's the part I liked, where my loser ass felt like I was above someone. even though I actually toiled in the fields too, and the rich people had the mansions and the plantations, etc. But I was made to feel better because I arbitrarily was told my skin color made me better than someone else. And like a dupe, I believed it, and I worked my ass off and got nothing. And by the way, the white people that were in favor of slavery, and apparently still are, the ones that are all lazy bums, never wanted to do a day of work in their lives. So they actually kidnapped other people and made them do their work for them because they're lazy and they're savages. That's who that guy right there is, a savage. He thinks, oh, I'd rather whip somebody, I'd rather kill someone, I'd rather lynch someone than do my own work, because he's a bum, he's a loser. And that loser thinks he's superior to other people.
I mean, what are we gonna do with people like that? You can't do anything. And look, that man, that elderly man wearing the Confederate flag shirt, refusing to condemn slavery, he's someone's grandfather, he might be someone's husband, someone's father. And when I look at him, all I can think is, all we can do is sit around and wait for people like this guy to croak. It's the truth, it's the truth, it's the truth. Okay, bane of our existence, people like this. So all we can do is hope that people like him, people of his ilk, just leave this earth finally. And based on how old he is, doesn't seem like it's gonna be that long from now.
Yeah, but but they have a whole new supply now because of Trump. So yes, there was old racists, and eventually they died of natural causes, and it looked like the country was headed towards having less racists, which I think is a good thing, but the right wing now disagrees. So, but now Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump and others have created a whole new batch, and they're much, much younger, and they bother with some code words, barely. So they don't say, oh, I'm not in favor of slavery. I'm just saying there's an IQ difference and there's a crime difference. And I listen to a fancy podcast from Charles Murray or someone else, and I'm going to put a sophisticated spin on my racism. Look, man, if you're a racist, you are less intelligent than other people. That's the great irony of racists. They think, oh yeah, the pigmentation, that's what decides brain power. Since mine is lighter than yours, I'm smarter.
No, Jake, it's not the skin color, according to them. It's the culture.
Oh yeah,
it's the culture.
But then when we try to defend Western culture and say, hey, you know what? It's in favor of enlightenment, education, habeas corpus, all these different things. They're like, nah, I hate it. I hate democracy. We don't live in a democracy. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic. We get to oppress you. No, but the cornerstone of Western civilization is democracy. I hate it. We don't live in a democracy. Okay, then, all right, then you're a vicious, stupid racist. I got it. And do you want me to have sympathy for that old geezer? Is that what you want? He wants black people enslaved in chains. I'm supposed to have sympathy for him? So if you're a family member of his, get him some goddamn help, man. But honestly, you got to get 40% of the country help now. Almost all Republicans have a slightly different version of that line of thinking. And then what do they say? They all say the same code word that he started with, our heritage. You can't erase our heritage.
Can you imagine?
That's what the whole critical race theory nonsense is about.
Can you imagine if you proudly flaunted a heritage of losing, of being traitorous losers?
Yeah.
That's what you're proud of? Like, how embarrassing is that?
I mean, it's like people flying the Nazi flag in Germany going, whoa, you can't erase our heritage. It doesn't mean you have to celebrate the Nazis. Oh my God, did I just compare you guys to Nazis? Yes, I did. You literally would whip people, steal babies from parents and sell them like they were a couch or furniture. You would lynch people and have a picnic around them. Did you do it? No, you didn't do it. There's no reason for you to defend it. Yes, it's in our past. But when you defend it, all of a sudden you own it. As if it's like a positive part of our heritage. You didn't need to do that.
Right.
But you betray your own opinions and you make it obvious where you stand when you say, that's a part of our heritage that we have to protect. No, you don't have to protect it. You protect it because you're a racist.
So let's talk a little bit about the NRA conference, and more importantly, how the Second Amendment very much had, part of the Second Amendment was really about protecting the right to own slaves, right? So there's a historian named Carol Anderson. She's actually written at length about this, and I want to quote her. She had an interview with NPR that you guys can check out as well, and she talks about how the Second Amendment was in response to the concerns coming out of the Virginia Ratification Convention for the Constitution, led by Patrick Henry and George Mason, that a militia that was controlled solely by the federal government would not be there to protect the slave owners from an enslaved uprising, okay? Yep. So in other words, if ordinary people, AKA slave owners, don't have the right to bear arms and they just rely on the federal government to protect their right to own slaves, they might be in trouble. They might be in trouble. James Madison crafted that language in order to mollify the concerns coming out of Virginia and the anti-federalists that they would still have full control over their state militias. And those militias were used in order to quell slave revolts. The Second Amendment really provided the cover, the assurances that Patrick Henry and George Mason needed, that the militias would not be controlled by the federal government, but that they would be controlled by the states and at the beck and call of the states to be able to put down these uprisings.
So look, I think the history of the Founding Fathers is interesting and complicated and nuanced. And I think as some of them did terrible things, they actually put forward ideas that wound up healing the country eventually, a long time later. But Patrick Henry is an excellent example of how you shouldn't revere them without thinking it through. So he's the one that said, give me liberty or give me death. And then later makes an argument for, no, I need to have guns so I can shoot the slaves if they try to escape and try to get to liberty. In other words, if they try to get to liberty, I will give them death. That's the same exact Patrick Henry. So yes, guns were used for slave patrols in the South. That was their quote unquote militias. Literally, that was their militias. The North had different militias. And in the Second Amendment, it says a well-regulated militia being necessary. And everybody just refused to, the right wing can't speak English. So they're like, no, it doesn't have to be a militia. It literally says it. And by the way, they were originally slave patrols in half the country. And it says well-regulated. They're like, no, it means no regulation. You guys speak English? You know, you're the ones always saying like, well, speak English in this country.
It doesn't matter. All that matters at this point is how our right-wing Supreme Court interprets the Constitution.
Yeah.
And they're about to lose, as I talked about on the show recently, they're about to loosen gun laws even further to essentially allow for concealed carry everywhere throughout the country, regardless of what your state laws indicate. So that's where we're headed. It's just, this is the country we live in. And unless we have actual bold leaders who not only want to pass the right legislation, but want to fundamentally reform and change our institutions, we're screwed. That is the reality of the situation. Now we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about how Joe Biden is just addicted to losing and how he has decided to attack one of the most popular government programs in the country just before the midterm. So come right back, we'll give you those details and more.
All right, back on TYT, Jen Canana with you guys. An important comment from Twitch. Overseer Dixon says, good news though, sweet haircut, Cenk. I'm not saying anything. The people have spoken, okay? All right, more news.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about how the Biden administration is really like hell-bent on losing. The Biden administration has enacted the highest Medicare premium hikes in history right before this year's midterm elections. And he wonders why his approval rating is so low. By the way, another thing that he said today was he can't really do anything about inflation tied to gas prices or food prices. So really good campaigning message you got there. Now, let's talk a little bit about what he's been doing with Medicare because it is pretty disastrous. Now, in 2021, come back to me because I want to set this up before we go to that graphic. So in June of 2021, Biden's FDA ended up approving a drug meant to treat Alzheimer's known as Adalim. And the problem with that drug is that it seems like the FDA kind of rushed through the approval for it. There are some mixed studies as to how effective it is. And the cost of the drug, as you can imagine, because we live in the United States, is pretty astronomical. So after the Biden administration's FDA approved it, and even after all of the scientific disputes about the drug, the administration used coverage of that drug under Medicare plans to justify a pretty significant price hike for Medicare. So November of 2021, the Centers for Medicine and Medicaid Services, which administers and oversees Medicare, approved the historic 14.5% premium increase for all Medicare beneficiaries. The announcement noted that, among other reasons, the hike reflects the need to maintain a contingency reserve for unanticipated increases in healthcare spending, particularly certain drug costs, and specifically for the Alzheimer's drug that I mentioned earlier, right? And so again, they used that drug as justification for this insane price hike. A few days later, CMS revealed that the projected cost of Adalim was alone responsible for half of the premium increase. The resulting outcry led to the manufacturer of the drug, Biogen, to halve the drug's price the following month. Now, by the time we hit January of this year, Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra, or Baccaria, as Biden likes to call him, called on CMS to reassess those premium hikes this year, right? And then by April of 2022, Medicare instituted strict rules regarding who could receive Adalim under its plans. Come back to me for a second. Let me be specific about what those strict rules are, because I wanted to dig in deeper, figure out what they meant. They would only cover it if you're taking it as part of a clinical trial. Which, by the way, if you're taking the drug as part of a clinical trial,
why are you paying for it?
Yeah.
That's your trial. I'm the guinea pig. Yes, I might be interested in it because it might help me, and there's no other drug available that might help as much. That's why we sign up. But it's a clinical trial, so you can make billions in profit.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing you covered. Wow.
Yeah.
In other words, they didn't cover the drug.
And someone who works for CMS made that clear during an interview with CNBC, that that's the only way that they would cover the drug if it's part of a clinical trial. Okay, now around this time, CMS announced a massive 8.5% increase in the rates paid to for-profit Medicare Advantage plans, despite the Medicare Payment Advisory Commission concluding that Medicare Advantage is more costly than traditional Medicare. And so just to give you a sense of how disastrous this is, I mean, they're moving toward privatizing more components of this incredibly popular government healthcare plan, right, Medicare. As Susan Rogers, the president of Physicians for a National Healthcare Program, called out, she says Medicare Advantage insurers such as United Healthcare, Anthem, and CVS Aetna are celebrating record profits in the tens of billions of dollars. Their business plan is simple: inflate their Medicare payments by making seniors look sicker than they are, and then pocket more of those Medicare dollars by ruthlessly denying seniors care. So that's the kind of care that they provide to our seniors. Now, let's get back to the Alzheimer's drug, because it turns out that, as I mentioned, Medicare isn't gonna cover that Alzheimer's drug. And since Medicare isn't gonna cover the drug, how do you justify that insanely high hike in the cost of Medicare per patient? On May 27th, the Biden administration announced that despite the extraordinary premium hikes that stemmed from inaccurate price assumptions, they would not be lowering the monthly premium deducted from Social Security checks, instead saying any overcharges will be factored into next year's Medicare premium calculation.
Sure they will.
Sure they will, yeah.
Just like you told us they would this year. Okay, so of course the question is Biden stupid or corrupt? And
answer is both.
Hint, both, but we'll explain why both. I'm not just being glib about it, okay? There's real reasons we're gonna explain. So first of all, just let's clarify what happened there, okay? All that is to say, your Medicare bills are going up 14.5%, okay, what you have to pay in. You're getting nothing extra, but the private healthcare companies are getting an 8.5% increase. It's just robbery. It's just taking money from you and giving it to the donors. Now, wait, how do we know they're donors? Well, let me give you graphic 6. So this is the corrupt part. Biden raked in roughly $47 million from healthcare industry executives during his 2020 campaign.
It's quite a bit of cheese.
And now mainstream media reporters will tell you that has nothing to do with anything. No, Biden is not affected by $47 million at all. This is just a coincidence that he happened to screw over the citizens and give all of the money to the same guys who gave him $47 million to run for office. Total coincidence. Every mainstream media reporter will tell you, no, it's not a coincidence, he's a crook. So now, is he a purposeful crook? Does he know he's a crook? No, this gets to the stupid part. So the article that came out the other day about how Biden is befuddled, they're not making it up. It's real. It's the real White House sources, etc. And Biden genuinely doesn't understand. He's like, I don't get it, man. I gave everything to corporations, and I passed the infrastructure bill they wanted, and I did everything that like a corporate goon is supposed to do. Why am I not popular? And if you're thinking, come on, how can anybody be that dumb? But you have to remember the context that Biden has lived his whole life. He has done this hundreds of times. They used to call him the senator from MBNA. That was a credit card company. So he was so corrupt, they named him after a financial institution. And so he would do corporate giveaways, and he would screw the American people over every time. And then what would happen? Mainstream media would cover for him. And they would tell you the exact opposite. They was, oh, Joe Biden, average guy from Scranton, originally grew up in Scranton. He takes a train. Did you know he takes a train? A choo-choo train. He did back home to Delaware, okay? Average man, average man. The guy's been in the Senate 50 years, he was vice president. Average Joe, average Joe. They lie on his behalf. So he thinks it's the old world. He thinks it's the 1990s. Why aren't they lying? Well, they are, Joe, but here's what you're missing. Mainstream media is still telling the same exact lies. Did you hear this in mainstream media? No, this is David Sirota's Lever that wrote this story, and we're giving it to you guys. You're never gonna hear this in mainstream media. They're never gonna tell you. And by the way, isn't it interesting? Fox News is never gonna tell you. Wait, shouldn't Fox News beat the living crap out of Biden for this?
No, but they love.
Oh, but the healthcare companies.
Dismantling anything that helps ordinary Americans, they love it.
Yes, so the Fox News is also a multi-billion-dollar corporation who also receives millions and eventually billions in the long run from those same healthcare companies. So even the Sean Hannitys and the Tucker Carlson's like, shh, don't tell people what the real problem with Joe Biden is. But because of social media and because of all the other factors in media now, people are finding out. And when they find out, they're furious. And bottom line is though, even if they don't know any of these details, Joe, what the F did you do for them? You said you were going to do higher wages, $15 minimum wage. You said voting rights. You said gun control. You said child tax credit. You said paid family. And here's how much of it you did: nothing, zero. And your stupid, befuddled ass is sitting in the White House going, "I don't get it, man. I gave them nothing. Why aren't they happy? I don't get it." You know what they're thinking of doing? No joke. They're thinking of moving out Ron Klain, who's the chief of staff, and bringing in a more conservative, more corporate-friendly chief of staff. They're never going to get it because they're paid by these companies to live in this bubble where corporations should receive everything. We should all be screwed, but we should also like it. We should like being screwed by corporate rule. So yeah, then when he loses the election, he's gonna be, I don't get it, man. I made Medicare more expensive. It's the second most popular program in the country after Social Security, and I hit it, and I hit it hard, and I delivered nothing for the voters. I swear to God, they genuinely don't get it. Right now, anybody in the
Cenk, the reason why they don't get it, I'm just gonna keep it real. They don't get it because they have succeeded in screwing us over, very similar to the way Bush-era Republicans would screw you over. And then they'll point to the extreme right and say, but we're better than the extreme right, so you have no choice but to vote for us. I'm done with that. I'm done with that, okay? If we continue rewarding them for using that tactic over and over again, they're gonna keep doing this. So I'm done,
I know, but
I'm done.
Okay,
I'm
so
putting that
general
out
elections
there.
are a different thing. In the primaries, you vote against every Democratic incumbent.
They cheat during the primaries,
They're-
and then you have no choice but to vote for a crappy, corrupt Democrat. And you know what? You do have a choice. The choice is short-term pain by not rewarding these goons who are just corrupt prostitutes. I'm done with it.
I guarantee you, if the White House watched this,
go cry about it.
Okay, what they will actually take away from this is those guys are radicals.
Good, yeah, I'm so radical that I don't want elderly people to die because you guys are dismantling Medicare. I'm so radical. Go ahead and call me radical. You guys are trash, absolute garbage. I know it, the American people know it. Apparently you don't know it, so I'm here to tell you, you're trash. There.
She speaks for me.
All right, we got to take a break. Sorry, Cenk.
No, God bless.
So let's do that. When we come back, we'll talk about how Republicans are planning on stealing elections, which, do they even really need to do that with how feckless Democrats are? We'll be right back.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Forward.
Politico has obtained recordings of GOP operatives and their plans to essentially steal elections moving forward. And this is a pretty robust plan, a multi-year plan. The plan, in fact, as outlined by a Republican National Committee staffer in Michigan, includes utilizing rules designed to provide political balance among poll workers, to install party-trained volunteers prepared to challenge voters at Democratic majority polling places, developing a website to connect those workers to local lawyers, and establishing a network of party-friendly district attorneys who could intervene to block vote counts at certain precincts. Now, Cenk's gonna get into the weeds on how this is all gonna work, but let me just note something. This is a very clear, detailed plan. I have no doubt that they will execute it. I also have no doubt that even with this information, Democrats will do nothing to mitigate it, nothing to stand in the way of it. They will sit back and allow this all to go down, giving Republicans, giving the right wing an upper hand in essentially rigging our democratic process to their advantage. Cenk.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to get to what I would do as opposed to what the Democrats are going to do, which of course is nothing. Just fill in the blank. Any issue, Democrats will do what? Nothing. So that part's the easy part. Okay, so why is this a concern? What's normal? Normal is you have poll workers at your polling station wherever you are, and if you're in a heavily Republican area, you'll have more Republican poll workers because that's just the demographics of the region. If you're in a heavily Democratic area, you'll have more Democratic poll workers. But there's no harm in a Democrat or a Republican being a poll worker. That's normal, that's America, okay? So what's different about this? Well, number one, these poll workers are being trained by the Republican Party and they are coordinating with the Republican Party. Now that is a potential problem because what the Republican Party is teaching them is how to challenge and slow down voting in the Democratic areas. So that way they can have an unnatural advantage. The Republican areas vote, no problem. Democratic areas have a bunch of basically people trained to go in there and blow up the process. And all they complain, oh no, I challenge, right? Until, and this is happening in Michigan, until all of a sudden the number of votes from Detroit are much smaller than they used to be because of all the challenges. And Michigan's a swing state, and all of a sudden they win by a little bit. And then afterwards they go, nope, stop the count, no way, right? Now, you say, well, how do we know they're doing that? Okay, there's a number of ways. One, they're definitely coordinating, nobody's hiding that. They're admitting it, okay? So then number two, they said, oh, we're not necessarily gonna challenge a voter. Okay, let me show you a slide from their presentation. It's graphic 5, okay, and get a load of this slide. It's called How to Challenge a Voter. Okay, and it explains all the different ways that you challenge a voter because the whole point of this process is to gum up the voting in the Democratic areas so less people can vote.
You know, Politico obtained like this presentation and like the audio recordings of it and all that stuff. And I feel like the people behind it are the ones who leaked it. Because it's like, get a load of this. We're gonna let the world know exactly what we're gonna do, and no one's gonna stand in our way.
Oh yeah,
like
but
no one.
But to be fair to the Republicans, they're not wrong. They could tell you. In fact, they did tell us. They said, "Oh, we had in 2020, we had prepared fake electors. We had them sign official papers. We just needed Pence to lie, and then this other lie, and then we would have stolen the election."
Yeah. Oh, you guys got a cute little committee investigating this? We'll just tell you.
Yeah, we'll just tell you. Oh, here it is. Peter Navarro wrote a whole book about it. And they're like, "What are you gonna do about it, Democrats?" And they know the answer: nothing. I'm sorry. So what would I do? Oh, by the way, one other thing. Does the Republican Party have a history of doing this, voter intimidation through the polls? Yeah. In fact, they were legally barred. The RNC was legally barred from doing any work with poll workers until 2020, just 2 years ago. You know why? Because they would constantly send armed people to Democratic polls, areas that were more heavily Democratic, where they were, obviously going to vote, and try to intimidate. It's not just Democratic voters, but mainly minority voters. So the courts had to rule: stop trying to intimidate people from voting by sending in thugs. Republican Party at large, right? So now that they're allowed to do it again because of the conservative Supreme Court, they're like, great, let's go intimidate the living crap out of the Democrats and minorities and go back to the good old days of Jim Crow. So Democratic response so far has been zero.
Nothing.
So what would I do? I'd say, oh, okay, no problem. Democratic Party, we are now coordinating. Okay, I would instantly get twice the operation. Okay, it's not like Democrats don't have money. They're swimming in money, okay? And I would say, okay, now we're gonna train you to go to the Republican areas. Do not challenge any of the voters on BS, okay? Don't do it until I give you the word. Because I'm not gonna do it if the Republicans don't do it. I don't want a mess for elections. I want everybody voting, okay? But the minute I get a report the Republicans are blocking voting in Democratic areas, unleash the hounds, okay? Block every vote, challenge every vote in every Republican district. And not only would I do it in Michigan, I do it in every swing state. And go, what? Okay, then now let's have fun. You guys want to cheat? Okay, two can play at that game. And then you know what would happen? All of a sudden, everyone would care because it affects Republicans. Then the Republicans would howl, oh my God, you can't do this to the polls and the poll workers, you can't. Oh, why? You were doing it. Okay, see, that's how you even the playing field, and you fight back and you make sure that they don't cheat. But the Democrats wouldn't do that if their life depended, and their political life does depend on it. And their answer is incompetence. And if I told them this plan, they would say, oh, that's outrageous. That's fighting back, how dare you? No, we should just let them make a mess of Detroit and all the other Democratic areas in Michigan and make sure we lose next time. And that's the stupid Democratic Party we have.
Let's move over to a hot topic involving working from home. Some people are forced to go back to work, especially if they work for people like Elon Musk. So let's discuss. Elon Musk wants Tesla workers who can work from home to get their asses back to the mines. Because he thinks that if you are working from home, you are unproductive, you're lazy, and you lay around doing nothing all day, even though there's a lot of data proving him wrong on that. But nonetheless, apparently an email he had sent was leaked to the press, and in the email he says this to his employees: anyone who wishes to do remote work must be in the office for a minimum, and I mean minimum, of 40 hours per week, or depart Tesla. This is less than we ask of factory workers, which, by the way, let's pause already. If you're asking factory workers to work more than 40 hours a week in the factory, like that sounds like a problem that you have created within your company. But nonetheless, let me continue. If there are particularly exceptional contributions for whom this is impossible, I will review and approve those exceptions directly. Moreover, the office must be a main Tesla office, not a remote branch office unrelated to job duties. For example, being responsible for Fremont factory human relations, but having your office be in another state. Thanks, Elon. Okay. So before I get to more details about this story, I do get it, right? Overzealous employers want to monitor every single move that their employees make. They want to make their employees incredibly miserable. One of the reasons why some people actually thrived mentally during the pandemic, the people who were lucky enough to work from home, was because they were able to work from home and feel free while doing their jobs. In fact, there are studies proving that most people who were able to work remotely, were able to work from home, actually ended up working more because it was really difficult for them to know when to stop working. When your day ends in the office, you drive home, you cook a meal, you watch Netflix, the night's over. But if you're working from home, and I experienced this, you kind of don't want to stop working. You're already there, right? Now, go ahead.
No, I think this is a super interesting story, and we're going to do a poll on it. And I think it has nuance, because I like that he's saying it to white collar workers. If he was just saying to blue collar workers, you guys bring your ass into the factories, but the executives can sit at home and do nothing, that would be way worse, right? He's worried that the executives are sitting around doing nothing, which you don't often see in corporate America.
I don't get the sense that he's specifically referring to executives.
Right, but white collar, I got you.
People who
That's
can work
true.
from home, yes.
Right, and I think that it might depend on the job, the person, the circumstance, but at least he's not punching that far down. Do you see what I'm saying?
At this moment, yes.
Yeah.
With this particular story, sure.
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay, I mean, look, I think, first of all, it depends on the job, right?
CEO not punching down, okay, at his workers who aren't blue collar, but also are not the CEO.
Yeah, no, I get it. That's why I said he's not punching down that much, okay? Yeah. And so, look, it depends on the job. So here, the hosts have to show up because this is the studio. During COVID for a little while, yes, we could do home studio, but it's much better to do it here. Stage crew has to show up. It is what it is, right? Now, in our case, we found out through COVID that our editors don't necessarily have to be in the office. They're doing a great job editing from home. So problem solved, right? So I don't feel the need, so you better come in. And because part of the idea is we got to watch over you. Otherwise, everybody's lazy.
Yeah,
right?
It's just the assumption that your own employees are garbage, lazy human beings, and you have to lord over them all the time and monitor everything they're doing. Do you guys understand? It starts with a pretty terrible assumption about the people you've hired.
Yeah, and by the way, that's why I started my own company, because I can't stand people looking over my shoulder and going, are you working? Are you working? Are you working? Right? Yeah, I'm working. Let me give you my work product and then see if you like the work product.
Totally, yep.
And so that's basically our rule here. Yes, you got to put in a certain amount of hours if you have a job that's dependent on the physically being here, et cetera. But at the end of the day, the number one thing is, did you do your job or didn't you? Right? And so I honestly don't know why anyone cares, like in Elon Musk's position. If you give me a great work product, let's say it's a deck, or it's a video, why do I care if you did it here or in Timbuktu?
So look, this email of his sparked an intense online debate. One person on Twitter wrote, "Hey Elon, a lot of people are talking about this leaked email. Any additional comment to people who think coming into work is an antiquated concept?" And get a look. Again, it's the assumption they should pretend to work somewhere else. Well, okay, Elon, did you hire people who don't really need to provide a product for you and can get away with pretending to work?
Then why don't you fire them? I'm being serious. If they're white collar, they're executives, and you think you asked them to do, let's pick a random thing, a marketing presentation, and they didn't give you one. Well, they didn't do their job. Go ahead and fire them. It's okay. I get it, right? But what are you weirdly crying about it?
Okay.
Okay. It depends on the job. Some jobs have to be at the office, some don't. And by the way, he's not completely wrong. He says about human resources. Well, if you're a human resource at a certain factory, you got to show up at that factory. I think that's true, because people might need to come in and complain about something that's happening on the factory floor or need some assistance, et cetera. So it depends.
Okay, so now let me throw a few monkey wrenches into your argument, because this is the thing that really kind of enrages me, actually. Mm-hmm. So I hear you about blue collar workers, and we should have a functioning government that actually considers the difficulties people have in being able to just go to work in the first place, right? People who are able to work remotely have a benefit in that they don't necessarily have to look for childcare. They can still get their jobs done without essentially being screwed over by not being able to afford childcare. So there's that. I don't know if anyone else noticed, but gas is really, really expensive right now. So commuting to work when you don't necessarily need to commute to work, you can work from home, makes no sense to me. It makes no sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I get it. I mean, if you have to be in the office, you have to be in the warehouse, you have to be in the factory. I get it. Certain jobs require that. But if you can help some of your employees out in a difficult time in our economy when inflation is through the roof, why wouldn't you do that? Now, of course, for someone like Elon Musk, it doesn't matter because he's so fabulously wealthy that he's completely untouched by all of these economic issues that hurt most workers, whether they be blue collar or white collar. But that's the reality of the situation. Chalking it all up to they're lazy, I think completely dismisses, again, the very real economic concerns that people have with having to go into the office when they don't really need to.
Yeah, he's making another mistake too, which is assuming that everyone has the same incentives as he does. He's like, I don't get it. Why don't you just work 24 hours a day like I do? Well, but they don't own the company.
Because not everyone wants to live to work, because people want to live, like they want to have a life outside of being in your freaking factory or your workplace. That's why.
If you've given them the proper incentives, then they'll want to work more than 40 hours, especially if they're white collar, right? And I appreciate that. I love that. I love hard work, right? And if people work more than 40 hours, I love it. That's great. And you give them the proper incentives to do it, and they'll deliver for you. But if you say, hey, I keep the $250 billion, you don't get that much, and now I want you to work more than 40 hours, and I want you to drive, and I want you to pay the gas prices, and I want you to go to work, even if it doesn't make any sense to, into the office. So, but I'm curious what you guys think too about all this. The poll we're asking, tyt.com/polls every time, is would you rather work from home or the office? And the answers are remote, office, hybrid. You know, I don't. Do you think everybody's going to say remote? I don't know that everybody's going to say remote. I think a lot of people like to work
I think
at the
there are
office.
weirdos like John Idarola out there who like want everyone to be in the office because he's a sadist. I don't know. He's a weirdo. I can't stand it. I personally can't understand why people who don't need to be in the office want to be in the office. Like, I think you're weird. Like, what's wrong with your home life? Go back home.
No, you're crazy. Now you're making the same mistake as Elon is, in the sense of like assuming everybody thinks like you. Other people are a little bit more social than you, Casper. Okay, so
don't be social with your coworkers.
You get a sense of where Anna stands. Everybody's got a bias.
Lawsuits waiting to happen. Anyway, all right. Well, that does it for the first hour. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about how the Biden administration is piggybacking off of what the Obama administration did with student loan relief to take credit, and he doesn't deserve it. We've got that and more coming right up.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.